Okay, how's everyone doing today? Here's another video by Precision's Options and Futures. This is a special request by our members. This video, we're going to go over entries, exits, stop losses, targets. This is kind of like an expansion on what we had done the last weekend, where we talked about support and resistance, Fibonacci's, trend lines, because I use all of those things when I'm trading, right? So how do I determine, where am I entering? Where am I exiting? What's my target? What should my stop loss be? These are all important things to know when you're trading, right? So you need to know how to use trend lines. You need to know how to use support and resistance. You need to know how to use Fibonacci's. And you also need to know how to use moving averages as well. So I use all of those things when I am entering and exiting my trades, right? It's also, it's very important before you place any trade. You don't want to just place a trade just to place a trade, right? Because you're just itching to place a trade and you're just itching to make money, right? You need to have a plan going into it, right? As they say, plan the trade and trade the plan, right? So, let's go over a few things here. Let's talk about the Nasdaq chart here. So this is, something that we had plotted earlier, right? Now, let me zoom out here, actually. So this was actually an entry of mine and our members, right? So you can see this red trend line here, right? So we had a tag here, and a tag here, right? So, basically anytime you're drawing trend lines, you're just trying to find multiple points where price reacts to it and then, goes in the other direction, right? So, if you're just looking at this part of the chart here, right, anytime you have price sloping up, right, you're going to draw a trend line like this, right? So you have one point here where it bounced from, and you have another point here where you bounce from, right? So you can plot a trend line here to here, and then that can provide you with entries from there on out, right? So you see this same trend line, we bounced perfectly from there. And then this time, not so much, but even this time, we did get a nice bounce from this trend line, right? So we entered long on that trend line, okay? And this is one of those ones where, there's a little bit of tomfoolery going around, and the market will actually go below it, and it actually peaked below this level here in this 15,154 level. And I actually got stopped out on this trade, right? So I entered here, right, in this 15,400, 15,380 area. And then I placed a stop loss, with the Nasdaq, it's a little bit tricky because you got to use a little bit wider stop losses, especially as volatility increases. So my stop loss was below 15,300, right? Because I was planning on them kind of, playing games and spiking below that, right? So we actually got stopped out at 15,300, just below that. And then I got back in again because we did have support at 15,170, right? So we got back in at 15,170, and the low was 15,152. So that was a good entry there. And then we bounced hard back up to this level right here in this 1,600 area, right? And that's a good hard number, right? We tend to find support and resistance sometimes at these big psychological numbers like 16,000, right? But I actually used the Fibonacci retracement for this target here. Okay, so my target was the 618 retracement at 1624, right? Now, I actually plan to scale out of this position. Like, I entered at 15,170, right? As this position moved up, right, you should be scaling out of your positions, right? And then just keep bumping up the stop loss as you go, right? So by the time it bounced from 170 to 15,500, I had trimmed out of a good amount of my position here, right? And then I bumped up my stop loss from 15,170 to 15,374. That way, if the trade ends up going against me, I don't lose any money. In fact, I'm green on the trade, right? So, I made from 15,170 to, 15,370. I made 200 points there, right? And I bumped up my stop loss to the break-even level, right? So no matter what happens, I don't lose any money. Now, from when I got out 15,500 and I bumped up my stop loss to 15,350, I locked in profit about 400 points on the Nasdaq, and then I also bumped up my stop loss above my entry, right? So I'm walking out of here with at least, about like 300 points profit, right? Now, what's my next target, right? I usually look for the 50% to the 618 to get out of, right? And again, I actually set an order to get out at 1,600. You saw it ran up to 1,609, just in case they decide to front run this the 618 retracement. And as you can see, they did stop short of 16,024. They hit 16,009, right? So I was out of almost all my position at the 16,000 area, right? Now, I thought about initiating a short there because that was just, it was just an obvious short, but I didn't actually get in a short there. But you could have easily flipped short there at 16,000, and then your stop loss would have been a break above 16,160 here, this price level here, right? Okay, because once we break above this level, there's probably a trend change happening, right? We obviously didn't get that. Price ran up there and then rejected down. So again, if you would have either closed out your longs here or looked for a short here, you could have entered short at this retracement here at 16,000 and then placed your stop just above the next resistance level, okay? And then as you can see, we sold off down here. We still went down to as low as 14,400, so quite the drop from there, right? Now, obviously, if you entered short here, what's my target, right? You can always take profits at a support level, right, at 15,560 here. This is a support level that I have, right? So this is where you would at least scale out of your profits. You also have this same trend line here, right? Now, if we're coming back down to test this trend line again so soon, it's kind of a little bit of a weaker bounce, right, compared to the previous time it bounced off of there, right? So we actually came down here, and then we look like we might come down and test it again, but buyers came in, stepped in very strongly, and saved it from even touching that point and pushed it up, right? Here, not so much, right? It came down and tested it again 3-4 days later, right? And, they tried to save it a little bit, but then you can see it failed big time from there, right? And we actually had a 2.5% down day there, right? So, and again, you can just keep bumping up your stop or bumping down your stop here, right, if you shorted at 16,000, right? Okay, so, once it hit here, bump up your stop loss to your entry point, okay? And then, as you can see, it never came back up there. So theoretically, you could have kept riding this down and keep bumping up your stop as it broke new support, right? So if it comes down to here, bump up your stop to entry, right? And then it broke this trend line. Now it came down to this 15,170 support level. Bump up your stop to this support here. So now you've bumped up your stop to more than what your entry was. So no matter what happens, you still make money at the end of the day, right? And then price came down to here, and you hit the 200 period moving average, and then you could have bumped up your stop to 15,384. Again, you would have never been stopped out, so you would kept riding it down. As it broke this support, you could bump your stop up to here at the 15,000 mark, and then kept riding it lower, right? At this point, I'm definitely taking profits, right? In fact, I was actually bottom fishing here, and I was looking, I did take a long at 15,000 because you can always, and that's another point of entry as well, right? The moving averages, right? And the moving averages I typically use are the 200 period moving average, the 21 period moving average, and the 50 period moving average. right? And you should look at multiple time frames for all of these because price will react to moving averages at different time frames, right? So like if I'm scalping intraday, I'll actually look at the 3-minute 200 period moving average, right? And if you look at the Nasdaq actually reacts to that multiple times. I can't really find a good example here. Okay, so here's one here. Nice bounce off of there. Nice, decent bounce off of here. Not much of a reaction there. Okay, so here's another one here. Couple here. Broke below it, rejection. Broke below it, rejection. Kind of spiked above it, broke back low, rejection. Broke back low, rejection, right? So the 3-minute 200 period moving average is something that I use a lot for the Nasdaq. You know, I find a lot of times you'll get a reaction off of the 200 period moving average on the weekly chart, the daily chart, the 4-hour chart, the 1-hour chart, the 15-minute chart, and the 3-minute chart. I look at those quite frequently, okay? So it's important, as always, as a trader, we're looking at multiple time frames as well, okay? Now, the other thing, obviously, like I said, is Fibonacci levels, right? So this was a level here. And then you can also use Fibonacci extensions, right? So, you know, here's, you take a swing high to a swing low, right? So now we broke below this swing low here. So we're looking at lower targets here, right? So a lot of times you look for the 1272 extension and then the 1618, right? So I actually took a long here because we have support at this level, and it's also the 1272 extension, right? 14,750, right? And then I got stopped out. So my stop loss was kind of in this area right here, right? So I got stopped out at 14,600 area from 14,750, right? So I was looking for a retrace to the 15K area. Didn't quite get that, right? So that would have been a 250 point swing in my favor, whereas I got stopped out for about 150 points too. So you also want to consider your risk to reward also, right? You know, you don't want to be taking a long position where the risk reward ratio is just horribly in your favor, right? You know, typically, you know, with the Nasdaq it's tricky too, but typically you want to risk less than what the potential reward might be, right? So you can always skew the risk reward ratio in your favor by taking entries at support levels, at moving averages, at Fibonacci levels, at trend lines, okay? So then I actually got back in long here, and we're currently long right now. I got back in long at 14,400 area, and then we have this 618 retracement down here at 14,280. So I also have another order fishing there. So far, that's not hitting, but you know my stop loss is actually just below that point at 14,200, right? Because if that breaks, we're most likely hitting the 14,000 to 13,900 area. Again, 14,000, big psychological level, right? So, you know, that's basically it as far as looking for entries on any trade that you're looking for, right? Whether it's long or short, right? You know, just enter, you know, plot your support, plot your resistance, look at your moving averages, and look at your trend lines, right? And look at your Fibonacci trend lines, support, resistance, moving averages, right? That's what I use, right? Find your resistance, or, you know, find those levels, and then, you know, if you're looking for a short entry, right, you want to only enter a short at a resistance level, right? So if we're coming up from below up to a price level, that's where you enter short, right? If you're below, you know, let's say, you know, right now the Nasdaq, we're below the 200 period moving average, your short entry would be, you know, the 15,000 area, right? And it's also a nice hard psychological number, right? Or if you're coming down from the bottom of a trend line, you know, we come up and hit this trend line, that's a good entry for short, right? So if we somehow run up to 15,400, That's a good entry for short, right? And then you just want to put your stop loss just above those levels, right? You know, with the Nasdaq, you want to give yourself plenty of wiggle room just in case it really, you know, spikes up through it, because they do what's called stop loss hunting, right? You know, and they'll try and stop you out, and then the trade will go back in your favor, right? So it's very frustrating when that happens, right? And then also, let's get rid of this Fibonacci. You know, we can also do a Fibonacci retracement too. So, you know, if we're looking for a short here, you can also use the Fibonacci retracements as a short entry. So if we're running up here to 15,194, this is also a support and resistance level here. This could be a good short here, or even this support here, right? So this area is in confluence with another price level. This 618 is in confluence with this trend line, right? So these would be good short entries if you wanted to enter short, right? So if you wanted to enter short here, you would just place your stop loss just above that level. I would even give yourself, you know, because this is 15,400. I would give yourself a pretty deep stop loss here. I would go as high as 15,600 on this if you were to short there, right? So, you know, it's just like I said, plan the trade and trade the plan. Okay, let's take a look at one other name. I don't want to talk just about the Nasdaq, right? So here's Facebook. Let's get rid of this trend line here. Okay, so here's a level here where price has reacted to multiple times right here, right? So this is previous. This is a resistance level that we finally broke above, right? And then we gapped up above it, and then we tested this level. This is a good entry for longs, right? Okay, because we're coming down to a prior resistance level, which should now be support, right? And this is also, as you can see, pretty close to a trend line as well, okay? So you can see price reacted here multiple times, right? So you could enter here, and then I would place your stop loss. And so you entered at, let's say, 348, right? You would want to get your stop loss down to about the 340 area, just in case it came down below that trend line, because the next logical level is 332, okay? And then where would I be looking to take profit if I took long there? So don't have much to work with other than the Fibonacci here. So here's your targets on the upside, right? The 50% retracement or the 618, right? And you see we ran from this level up to the 50% retracement and almost quite to the 618, right? We did actually kind of pull back from this area and then come up and eventually hit the 618 and then retrace, right? And then same thing, this level gets tagged again. And you could possibly look to enter long here as well. And this is also right in this trend line. It looks like it was going to break the trend line, but it came right back above it, right? So again, we could have entered here and then, you know, keep bumping up our stop until we hit this area here. Now, what's our stop loss here, or what's our target here? We can take the Fibonacci extension tool here, okay? So you take the swing high to the swing low, and then your target would be the 1272 extension or the 1618, right? So you're looking to scale out at 371 and 376, right? So I'm usually out of almost all my longs at that 1618 extension, right? You can, you know, like I said, trim out you should trim out, if you entered here, you know, you're already up from 350 to 367, right? This is a resistance level here. So you should really be trimming out here and bumping up stop losses, and then trimming more and bumping up stop losses further at here, because this often, you know, sees a reversal from this level. And then same thing here, 1618. This is another area where you're taking profits and bumping up stop losses, okay? Now you could have tried to enter here, right? Taking along here because we're back at this trend line, right? And you did see a little bit of a reaction intraday, right, from those levels. You also have support in this area right here, right? But we just busted right below that area. And then you could have taken a long here. This would have been a logical long here. But again, you would have likely gotten stopped out, right? And your stop loss would have been, just below that support. So in this area here, so you would have got stopped out here, right? And then this came up to test that same level and then got rejected. So this actually is a good short, right? So we broke below that support level and then came back up to test this level again and then traded back down to here, right? And also one thing to note too is the more times a level gets tested, the less likely it is to hold, right? Okay, so now here's another potential entry for Facebook. And this, this is the 200 period moving average. This was basically a perfect bounce. 317.37. Okay, by 2 pennies. Bounced almost perfectly off the 200 period moving average, right? So you could have taken a long here, and that was really pretty close to this 315 to 316 level. So that also adds confluence and confidence to your entry point, right? So you could have taken a long here and then rode that up to the prior level, which is the 331 area, right? And this is where you would, again, be bumping up your stop losses and trimming out, right? And then you could have rode it up a little bit farther, right? And bumping up stop losses more and trimming out even more, right? And this, let's take a look at the Fibonacci here. So this would have given you another level here. You could take the swing high to the swing low. So this 344 area would have given you a good area to trim out of. We came just a little shy of that, but you get the point, right? Okay. So, and you can just see, price reacts to these levels multiple times, right? Now, again, 200 period moving average, we bounced off of it, came back below it, did not get a bounce here. So again, the more times you visit a certain area, like the moving average, the less likely it is to provide a reaction. So we bounced here, kind of a bounce here, and then sold off below it here. So not much of a reaction on the subsequent times, right? But this level here provided a good reaction, right? And then we came down here. Here was a level. We already tested this level. And then on the second time we tested this level, did not hold, right? So we tested the next level down, right? And we got a really good bounce here, busted up through here, busted up through this moving average, and then came all the way up to here. So this is, this was an area you could have taken long at the 303 area. Once it hit here, trim, move up your stop. Once it hit here, trim, move up your stop, because you have a resistance level here and the 200 period moving average, right? And then you also have this prior resistance level, which has proven very tough after it broke below it, right? And then once it hit that level, it sold off right back down to that same support level, right? So, this is the second time that we've been at this level. So, you can take a long here, but again, this is the second time we're testing it in the last few weeks. So, it's less likely to hold than this one. So always keep that in mind as well. I think that sums up everything pretty well. We can always go into further details or at a later time, or if you guys have any further questions, feel free to ask in the Telegram group. If you're not a part of our group, click the link in the description. We're running a trial right now. It's only $10 for 2 weeks. We're very very respondent to any questions that you might have. So, if you have any further trading related questions, that's a perfect place to ask, and we'll help you out as best we can. But that's all I have for you guys today. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time.